The fundamental agenda of the SPP touches a wide variety of health and safety, fundamental aspects of quality of life that we simply cannot cast aside. 5, it pushes us down that slippery slope of erosion of civil rights that we have seen in the United States. 2 examples. If we are moving to simply copy American securities legislation, we have the no-fly list. It's one example. The no-fly list in the United States didn't in any way improve the security for Americans. In fact, it became ludicrous. A list that has such individuals as Senator Ted Kennedy, Pat Martin, the MP for Winnipeg Centre, Alistair Butt, a 15-year-old, all found themselves on the no-fly list in the United States. All because of that were bumped off flights. In fact, in Alistair Butt's case, he was told by the airline company that he should change his name. This is a 15-year-old youth. Change his name rather than try to get his name off the no-fly list. Now, in Canada, we have a similar no-fly list, and we're starting to see the same similar problems in Canada. Another example, if we're copying American securities legislation, is the U.S. Military Commissions Act. I'll just quote for you how the American Civil Liberties Union describes this. They describe the U.S. Military Commissions Act as something that allows detainees to be sentenced to death based on testimony obtained through beatings. It gives a get-out-of-jail-free card to the Bush administration for war crimes. That's how the American Civil Liberties Union describes the U.S. Military Commissions Act. How does Stephen Harper describe it? He describes it as, quote, an appropriate judicial process, unquote. Reason number 6, it involves our military policy, our foreign policy, our immigration policy, simply integrating our policy and how Canadians feel fundamentally about those issues to American standards. In military policy, we've already seen from Michael Byers and other very well-respected individuals that under the guise of interoperability, essentially our Canadian military is not able to have the same independent functioning that Canadians believe profoundly we should have. Canadians invented peacekeeping, and yet our military no longer has the ability to function independently of the American military on those types of missions that Canadians feel are so fundamentally important. On foreign policy, a recent poll indicated that 83% of Canadians felt that fundamentally Canada needed to have an independent foreign policy, and yet the Harper government has indicated in its foreign policy documents that it is moving to keep in conjunction with our foreign policy, keep in mind American priorities on foreign policy. In immigration policy, we've seen the push in the United States to bring in foreign workers. And in Canada, we have seen a similar tendency. In fact, Monty Solberg announced just a few weeks ago that Canada would be moving to fast-track the approval of foreign workers here in Canada. Foreign workers who are brought in, not with the same standards, not with the same health and safety regulations as Canadian workers, but foreign workers that are brought in effectively as indentured servants, brought in, basically excluded from the labor code, excluded from health and safety regulations or minimum salary regulations, and allowed to stay here only as long as they keep that job. If they lose that job, if they are fired from that job, they are sent home. And we have seen many examples, both in the tar sands and even here in Vancouver, of workers being subject to substandard conditions because of that reality. The temporary workers are essentially indentured servants. 7, it's about our water and our water stewardship. Now, Canada has vast water resources, but our renewable water resources are about the same as the United States. In a very real sense, we have a very large bank account, but a low interest rate. And though we have 20% of the world's fresh water, we only have 6% of the world's renewable fresh water. Once it's used up, it is gone. The United States has a similar level of renewable fresh water, and as they use that water supply, because they have not provided the water stewardship practices, there is increasingly a call to move to Canada, which of course would have substantial environmental and ecological repercussions. We cannot allow our water resources and our environment to be dictated from the United States. Now, We have also seen, I mentioned the censored documents, it's in the area of energy and the area of water, where we see particularly documents that are blanked out. Now, bulk water exports are a real reality. Under NAFTA, they are not treated as a commodity, but once we start exporting our water under bulk water exports, then Chapter 11 provisions kick in. How many of you have heard of Chapter 11 of NAFTA? Many of you. We know that what essentially happens under Chapter 11 is a company, once a single bulk water export is approved, another company who makes an application for a bulk water export permit, sees that permit refused, can then sue the Canadian taxpayer for compensation. Canadians lose either way. Either we provide that bulk water export permit, or we provide compensation as taxpayers. And under Chapter 11 provisions, everyone in this room, as taxpayers, has already coughed up money in the past to other companies for compensation whenever their profit is impugned. For 8, it's about our energy sovereignty. Now, essentially, in Canada, our energy is already subject to American priorities under the proportionality component of NAFTA. Essentially, what happens now is that 60% of our oil and 60% of our natural gas is exported to the United States, even in the case of a major supply shortage. Under the SPP, we are moving even farther to our energy resources being considered part of the American security envelope. Which brings us to 9. The SPP is essentially the softwood sellout writ large. It means that the decisions on the softwood sellout, and those of us who live in Vancouver Kingsway already know David Emerson's softwood sellout means decisions around forestry practices are made in Washington, D.C. It extends that ability of Washington to determine what happens in Canadian industries right across our economic framework. Which brings us to 10. The 10th reason why the NDP is opposing the SPP. If we give away our energy sovereignty, we give away our water stewardship, we give away control over our economic industries, regardless of where they are in Canada, we give away our regulatory protection, our ability to decide what is right for our families, what is right for our communities, what is left. That is why the NDP is opposing the SPP. Because it essentially takes us down a road that once traveled down, we cannot return from. We have to stop the SPP. That is why we're holding these public forums across this country, and that is why we are engaging with such energy in this fight, literally, for Canada's survival. We invite you to join us in the fight, and together we will stop the SPP. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. And I just want to add one more thing to what he said, and that is in August, both Peter and I went to Montebello, just outside Ottawa, in Quebec, where the summit was taking place, and we walked down a long railroad track, because of course you couldn't get in, and we were stopped at every checkpoint, and there were big demonstrations going on, and it was a most surreal situation to see the security forces actually hiding behind the gravestones and in between the gravestones, ready to sort of launch out. And of course what we saw happen there were the aged provocateurs that got caught in the act, actually by the president of CEP, Dave Coles, who intervened. And I'm sure some of you saw that on YouTube or in the media. And Peter and I have been calling, and along with many others, for an investigation and inquiry into how such a thing can take place, where security forces can actually act as provocateurs at a democratic rally and demonstration where people are exercising their rights. Of course, we've not yet heard back from Stockwell Day, but it's something that we're pressing as well. So thank you very much, Peter, for your overview.